Welcome back to the Modern Old School Training Podcast. I'm Aaron King with Coach Bob King, and today's episode is brought to you by Second Skull. Second Skull is a phenomenal technology that I really wish we had when I was competing.
Oh, yes.
It's skull caps and headbands that are made up with the inside of this lightweight XRD. It's this technology that absorbs impact. And so all those little blows and all the impacts that you're getting on your head in sports, it could be soccer, it could be volleyball, it could be literally any sport that has any sort of contact. You can wear a headband, come in black, pink, camo, lots of different things. Yeah. And so visit secondskull.com. That's 2ndskull.com, secondskull.com. We'll link it below. Really thankful to have them on board. Check it out. But today's topic, we're talking about multi-sport athletes, different seasons, the training, the kind of everything that goes into benefiting from different sports, but then also really not burning out.
It's really an athletic development.
Yeah, this is probably our summary topics, really. Yeah. You know, if you took everything that we do, this is where it all comes down to. And so we're coming out of fall, and we're in that winter sports, going into spring. And so you get that kid, you kind of mentioned it earlier. He's your star running back, but he's also maybe your point guard, your pitcher, your outfielder, whatever.
4x1 leadoff guy.
Yeah, it could be any sport. We're talking about volleyball to soccer. Anyway, I could maybe give a million examples.
Yeah,
but
there's the talent pool in a lot of schools is not that deep, and it is in the sense that there are a lot of kids that come out. But when you start looking from a coaching standpoint of who are your frontline players, you always don't have a lot of depth, and so. Like I said, I'm using the male side of it, but it goes for girls volleyball. That setter is your star center in basketball and in softball, pitcher and so forth. So you pick the sport and the gender, and you run into this multi-sport situation. Now, the thing that I'm going to say I'm a little hesitant to endorse or opposed to is just specializing early on. Now I'll throw out the personal side of things where the King boys were kind of mandated to go play soccer, play basketball, play football, just play stuff, because when you get to high school, it's going to be time to compete. And that means you make teams, you start, you don't start. Those everybody plays days are over. But find out what you're good at, but almost more importantly, acquire multiple skills, hand-eye coordination, footwork patterns, things like that are offered through multi-sports. There's a whole lot of difference between a field sport and a court sport. And I just challenge people to just go look online and see how much you can find about your favorite player in your particular sport, whether it's a tennis player who was a great high school soccer player, and I think Nadal was that guy, or the one I know of. When I was with the Dallas Mavericks, I was part of my off-season job or pre-draft was to call universities and check on the guy, say what's his workout habits like, what's he like in training, was he a great leader in the weight room or a real butt to deal with. And I'll never forget, I didn't know the guy, but I called up in I can't remember now, it was New England, like one of those schools up in there, I called and I said, tell me about Joe Blow. And this guy is a stud. I mean, he ran the 400 meters in high school track. I said, we want him, because I know if you run the 400 meters, you have strength and endurance, and you have some speed. So I wanted that guy, and we didn't get him because everybody else wanted him, and man, he did well.
Well, there's some obvious athletic transitions there, but what are some things maybe that are misnomered? So, for example, hey, you are a wide receiver, and then you have to go run track to be faster, or you have to go play soccer to get in shape.
I've got a great one for that. And that's very common. I would say, first of all, coaches want you to do things that they think will benefit you in your sport that you are a star in, like you're talking about. There's two great examples. We had a wide receiver when I was coaching high school ball that it's kind of a good news, bad news. He was okay, but he would always come in to Saturday workouts. We played on Friday night. Saturday workouts, he'd come in kind of at the last minute. And one day I said, "Where you been?" He goes, "Well, I run cross country." I go, "What?" He'd get up on Saturday morning and go run cross country. That explained everything. In practice and in games, he could run all day and half the night, never even began to bend over and grab his shorts, but he was in great shape. Downfall, he had one gear. Mm-hmm. I mean, he wasn't going to run away from you or, break away and just score on a deep one. He would be a possession kind of receiver, but he had one gear because cross country will give you one gear because you don't have room to sprint because you got too far to go. Another example was I had a coach. I was an assistant at the time. He had this thing about wrestling and football players. And so he had he said, David, you need to wrestle. It'll make you a better defensive end. He wrestled. He was a better wrestler than defensive end because he liked to hold on to the guy. And if you're a defender, get away from the blocker. Right. Don't help him. But he would play defensive end. He'd get two hands on the guy, just hang on. It's like, no. And so that kind of crossover, it backfired. It sounds good. I mean, I can sit here and I can promote it because it sounds good. In practice and execution, it doesn't always work. Mm-hmm. The other thing, go back to cross country, because I did have a training incident with, or episode or whatever, with a soccer player who came to me and needed speed training. And so I said, all right, let's warm up, do this and this. And so, 5 minutes into it, I said, let me ask you something. You run cross country? Oh, yeah, my coach said I need to run cross country to get in shape. Well, no wonder you're heel to ball every stride, mm-hmm. which is death to speed. That's just a braking mechanism. Therefore, parents and coaches have got to be careful before they start running kids through sports for a particular purpose of like making you better in something else. When I say just do a lot of sports to find out what you're good at and get the skills from those sports, mm-hmm. okay? Because the crossover principles are having to do with things like conditioning and things that really don't cross over, like the wrestler, and grappling. We don't want to grapple in defense and football. We just want to tackle. And so get away from the blocker. So what we're doing is talking about, as a young age, go find out what you're good at. Bob King was never going to play basketball because all I had was 10 thumbs. I mean, I just could not. I couldn't dribble if I could have just played defense. But in the early days, they didn't care for that. Just didn't do enough.
I think a few of the sports are mentally the mental development as much as anything. So golf. Oh, yeah. If you're golf, I mean, that would transition into quarterback. Throwing a pick, having to stay mentally prepared. It could be in volleyball where you're the golfer, the carryover. You just mentally focusing.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And so with it depends on the sports, whether like wrestling is a individual team sport. Mm-hmm. Tennis is heavily individual. I mean, 100%. And so you learn to deal with yourself a lot. So I think there's so many different carryovers, and I just wish parents and then the sport coaches, I know in this and where we are, the club scene is competitive, demanding, and protective. Mm-hmm. And so I want you to play. I won't say anything so I'll get anybody upset, but you're going to just do X and don't talk to Y or Z, but you're just doing X. And if you don't do X, I won't help you get better at X.
Okay, now the other side of it. Now the athlete that is that person we kind of opened with, that is your star running back going into your star pitcher, your star whatever. Yeah. And this, again, any sport. How do you handle them from the training load, from a reps load, from et cetera?
What I tell everybody is kind of, it depends on this context, but there's basically two approaches I'll give them. What is your favorite sport? Okay, mm-hmm. I'm going to train you that direction. Or the other one is probably more common that I say is, what are you going to do next? Mm-hmm. All right, so if you are going to play football, remember, dancing is a contact sport. Football is a collision sport. So we're going to get you ready for football. And so that's so important. And you find out that you have skill versus training. In other words, I'm not going to lift weights. I'm not going to miss up my shot in basketball. Well, since we have disproved that to the nth degree, since I was with the Mavericks, I couldn't get the guys out of the weight room before a game. It's like, guys, go. We're tipping off in 10. And so, they understood, I'm this good. I know how to shoot a ball. The weights don't mess me up. My job was to regulate that so it didn't mess them up. How? Make them sore, tighten them up, that kind of thing. But if you do it properly, periodization, those kind of things, rotating exercises, putting a lid on the loads and trying to cap the rep schemes, that can be very limiting to the negative effect.
So let's get specific. Am I gonna back off of the running? Am I gonna just say instead of squats, I'm gonna do leg presses? What's a couple of auxiliaries or
you look for the seasonal things like big off season stuff, and in this day and age it doesn't exist anymore because there's year round everything. Mm-hmm. And football, you think, well, we can't play football every year. Well, they have big man camp, they have 7-on-7. So the answer to your question is to find relative exercises to keep you close. So with squatting, it's so difficult to match because it's such a all-invasive, every muscle and joint in the body. However, a lot of single leg movements, whether it's a single leg press, even a lunge or a step up, can help load you up carefully and help you transition into a squatting type of season. I think we've had pretty good success with that. Mainly because when it comes time to get under a bar and squat, we don't go 315 first week. It's just like even if you're experienced, we're gonna transition you into that type of training. Here comes the real kind of the key thing to it. You have to remember that in this day and age, off seasons have evolved and changed. You had off season. Early days, you really didn't have much off-season back 50s, 60s, even in early 70s. It wasn't really organized. And so most sports had a training camp of 2-a-days because they were just trying to catch up for the lack of activity in an off-season. The way we do things today with in-season training, off-season training, 2 off-season, summer and in-school kind of fall or winter kind of deal, you have to be able to, regulate the loads that athletes are lifting because you can overtrain them. And as they get older, they get proficient, and as they get proficient, they start to kind of cap and max the ability to gain strength at any kind of a high speed level. So I'm not going to put on a 5-10% strength gain every week, not at all. So you want to regulate that, and by doing that, we would regulate our athletes with the single leg movements, some leg press games we call them, and squat once a week. But we also knew that we were going to do some Olympics, which involved some front squat and things. So the Olympics would also help build in our leg strength and not have to squat all the time. So we kind of decreased the amount of loading on the lower extremities, low back, and that kind of thing. So there's ways to do that if you're smart about it and look across the spectrum of a year and find out, okay, we have 3 months of season A, 3 months of season B, and transitions are very, very important. And it's hard to say. A lot of football programs will keep, and I think if they're smart, keep the off-season training elements in season, what we call stay in touch. It doesn't have to be a full-blown workout. In any sport in season, you're simply trying to reduce and slow the loss of strength because it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Your opponent's going to have it. You're going to have it. You just want to be losing less than your opponent because that'll benefit you in the postseason.
All right. Well, anything before we finish off here? I mean, it's like an onion. This whole you pull
layers.
This one back, layers.
It's almost a sensitive issue too because coaches and mostly the parents who are somewhat manipulated by the coaches are if Johnny and Susie don't play, they will not have the opportunity to do. And I can't think of anything further from the truth. Number one, there are plenty of opportunities, plenty. Number two, if Susie or Billy has got the skill, they'll rise to the top. That's just how that works. Talent wins. So develop the athlete, develop the kid, let them find their strength. I've got, there's several of them, but I've just, this one little high school athlete I deal with is a captain of her soccer team, and she likes tennis more. But she's so effective in her soccer game that, the team elects her captain, and she does well, and she starts, but I want to play tennis. And like, man, what a contrast. But let them go. Let them do it.
All right. Well, if you have any questions, you can find me and Coach King on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Deep Snap. Coach King is at Coach Bob King. Visit the kingsportstrain.com and themost.fit. All these links are in the descriptions of all these things. And, we're putting out the newsletter. We're putting out content. So if you have questions, let us know. We're going to do what we can to answer them here and get as much content as possible. But visit themost.fit. I mean, there is so much content there. It's
awesome.
It's year round. So go there. And let us know if we can help in any way. For Coach Bob King, I'm Aaron King. Talk to you next time.